Steelers Nation, we are just days removed from the Steelers trading away George Pickens to the Dallas Cowboys for a 2026 third-round pick. And we are currently looking at the Steelers wide receiver position, looking very reminiscent of what it was last offseason, last year, so to speak.
You know, it's very symbolic that we're going through this again because like the Steelers every single season, it's the same thing all over again. Same song and dance, rinse and repeat.
And just last offseason, here we were discussing, like the Brandon Ayuk situation and other possible targets that the Steelers could be looking to trade and players to acquire via trade.
Yeah, and here we are.
1 year ago later, thinking that everything's fine and dandy after DK was traded to the Steelers 2 months ago, and we have Pickens. Pickens is gone, and now here we are doing it again. It's deja vu, bro.
Yeah, just with a better and a more pure wide receiver 1 in DK Metcalf and a much older wide receiver 2, projectedly. We don't know who the wide receiver 2 is going to be, but projectedly, as of right now, from a roster aspect, it's going to look like it'll be Robert Woods. The Steelers have to add somebody, and they will. We just don't know who. We just don't know when. We just don't know how that's going to happen. They will add a wide receiver. They have to.
There's no way that they can run into or go into the upcoming season running with this current core of guys. You have DK. We're all excited about him for the upcoming season in the future. Robert Woods barely had 300 yards last year with a Texans wide receiver room that was just riddled with the injury bug. Roman Wilson, he's coming off 5 snaps in his rookie season, plagued with injuries. There's a lot of excitement about him, but that's a lot to really bank on. That's a big gamble of Roman Wilson, though we're excited about him. And Calvin Austin, he's coming to a contract year. Though he stepped up as a true, I wouldn't even say true, but he stepped up as a wide receiver too when nobody else did.
Yeah, I'm confident in that area, but in terms of them being like the pure guys to be the solution or to be the guy for the future, I mean, it's a lot to gamble on. It really is, especially banking on their size and their ceiling in the NFL. We really need someone opposite of DK. We had that, and they traded him away for obvious reasons. They were just tired of his antics and his character and how he'd show up late for meetings and games and show very low effort in a lot of things, and he would throw hands with every defensive back he'd stand across.
No, he'd be a big meme, dude. Every time he would get into a brawl, it'd be a meme.
And that's now Dallas's issue. That's Jerry Jones's issue. So
Brian Schottenheimer's issue.
So whether you like it or not, Pickens is gone. It was a move that had to happen just based on that, and the Steelers didn't want to deal with it no more.
But as far as moving on as a football team goes, as far as a football team stance goes, it doesn't make sense. As far as time goes, as far as considering that this was always a possibility, why did you not have a plan and set? Or do they? Do they have a plan and set?
They have to. Or, fingers crossed, I hope they do. Now, they are going to add a wide receiver. We just don't know who, how, or when. Frankly, if they add a receiver or when they add a receiver, I'm not expecting that guy to be the solution or to be the fix. It could literally just be another camp body. It could just be another vet in the free agency pool. It could be a depth guy for another team that they'll trade for.
So what you're saying is it could just be like Mike Williams all over again.
It could very well much be everything that we went through last year. Rinse and repeat. Deja vu. Just a year later. It's the same wide receiver room, guys. It's just...
It's not that much different.
It's not. The
perspective of it all is not different.
No, Omar Khan will say that it's not even close to last year. It's pretty freaking close. I mean, come on. It's literally the exact same situation. We got a pure wide receiver 1 with nobody but 3s and 4s as the number 2 to be depended on. Maybe strength in numbers is what they're going to rely on again, where they have Pat Fryermuth, who should be involved more, Darnell Washington, who should absolutely be involved more. They got Roman Wilson. If he stays healthy, we would love to see, his potential and what he could bring to the table. But even then, they're relying on a second-year jump. It's not really a jump if you didn't even start yet. So they're relying on a start, a Calvin Austin type of start, where hopefully it's a little more immediate for the Steelers. Again, that's a lot to bank on.
It is.
We're going through the same situation. So in this video, we're going to discuss Omar Khan's comments based off of what he said during his press meeting after the trade, and we're going to go through some of the options. And I'm telling you right now, none of these are mind-blowing. None of these really excite me. And these are just options that we can think of right now. If you guys have any other options you want to put in the comments, feel free to do so, because I'm struggling to find anyone that they could add that will be a legitimate, exciting move for the Steelers, because I can't find nobody right now. It might be a situation where we have to deal with what we deal with. They'll add whoever from now until the start of the season, and then we'll go into mid-season by the trade deadline and trade for somebody out of desperation.
Yeah.
That's what it looks like we're going to do. That'll be the road that they travel again. That's what it looks like. I can't think of someone that they could trade for that will be a massive move that's going to excite, that's going to make this George Pickens trade this year make a lot of sense. Now, I know everyone, I'm going to throw this out before we get into anything else. A lot of people are throwing out DJ Moore or Chris Olave or Garrett Wilson, Tyreek Hill, right? None of those are realistic. One, Tyreek Hill is not going to come here because we don't have a quarterback, and we're not going to compete, so that's not happening. DJ Moore's not getting traded because why would Ben Johnson, one of the best offensive coordinators in the league the past number of years, who just became their head coach, why would he trade away the number one receiver for a young Caleb Williams? Why would he do that? Chris Olave, I like Chris Olave a lot. Big fan of him coming out of Ohio State. He had 5 concussions ever since entering the NFL, and would the Saints trade their number one?
Yeah, with Tyler Shuck now having to be the guy to go with Derek Carr retiring.
And Garrett Wilson. Why would they trade him? They just signed Fields. There's that chemistry from Ohio State. Why would they trade him? Who else is going to be their
The only way that any of those possibilities were to happen is if the Steelers trade away huge capital, and the Steelers are not going to do that.
No. So people can throw those names out, and I know it's exciting from, a thought aspect. I don't view any of them as realistic. Maybe something happens from now up until the season or now up until midseason. That stuff could escalate, but as of now, where we stand, I don't view them as realistic options. So I'm going to debunk that right now. I could be wrong because I didn't think DK was going to be a Steeler, and I didn't think they would trade Pickens post the draft. But
so it goes to show that Omar Khan, he makes the impossible very possible.
Yeah, like you think it's not going to happen, and then it does.
In more ways than one. So either it's good or bad.
So I could be wrong. I just can't find it realistic as of now. But we're going to get into Omar Khan's comments based off of what he said regarding the George Pickens trade. He said the trade actually happened pretty quick. Now, obviously, as you guys know, he was getting trade talks during the draft. They were looking to get a day 2 pick for George Pickens during the draft. And the Cowboys, at the time, their offer, the biggest offer that they could hand was a 4th-round pick. In fact, there were reports that teams laughed at the idea of trading for George Pickens and adding George Pickens to their team.
Yeah, that's rough.
Teams literally laughed at the Steelers in terms of talks of getting George Pickens traded to them.
Yeah, because they don't want that ego in the locker room. They don't want that situation to deal with. They don't, because Pickens is a handful.
What does that say about his character, man?
It didn't seem to bother Jerry Jones though.
Absolutely
I mean, nothing appears to bother Jerry Jones. I mean, it's the Dallas Cowboys we're talking about.
No, because they originally offered a 4th, which is why the Steelers didn't trade him during the draft. And then after the draft, clearly the Cowboys upped their offer to a 3rd for next year, and then they traded Pickens away. To Khan, it was a move. It was capital they couldn't refuse based off of however many picks they're going to have next year, which is projectedly 12 right now.
Yeah.
And they could add more. They could use some of those picks to trade for a wide receiver or to trade that for a lot of depth pieces later on down the season or towards the end of training camp, preseason or midseason. Anything can happen from now up until whatever time, right? They have picks to trade. They have capital they could use. They could obviously use all of that or the majority of it plus future capital to use some of that to trade up for a quarterback next offseason. Next draft is what a lot of people are expecting.
Yep.
But Khan did say that Pickens never asked for a trade. Pickens never asked for a trade, guys, but they still wanted to trade him away.
No, and he also said that they had a lot of honest conversations with George and both concluded that it was time for a fresh start.
They were just tired of his attitude, tired of his antics. And I think a lot of fans were too. He was too much of a headache, which again was a big reason why I didn't mind the idea of trading Pickens. I always entertained trading Pickens away as long as the capital was right. And I feel like what they got out of him was good value. It was good capital, especially since no one else would offer more. So take as much as you can get right now with Pickens in his situation and his antics. So the Steelers got what they got out of him.
Yeah.
Good value. And for the reason they traded him, I completely understand. They want locker room guys. They want players in there that are going to give a lot of effort, the guys that want to be there. That's why they trade him. The mistake is they didn't have somebody to replace him then and there. They still could weeks down the road, but as of where we stand, we have nobody.
No, it's a waiting game. It's yet to be determined, even if they do it.
But according to Omar Khan, he's very comfortable with the wide receiver room.
Yeah, geez, I heard this one before.
Yeah, I heard that last year.
Yeah, Khan said that they never would have made this trade happen if they didn't feel good about the current group of guys at wide receiver right now. In terms of comparison from last year, he said it's nothing even close to being the same as last year.
Sure
because they
thing.
traded for DK Metcalf. He's a better wide receiver one than George Pickens, obviously. They added Robert Woods. He's more of a seasoned veteran. It's not saying much at Robert Woods' current state. I would say he's a better receiver than Van Jefferson, but this is a man that didn't even have 300 yards last year.
No.
He's nothing but a depth piece, and who I thought was going to be a primary backup to Pickens and Metcalf when we first signed him, but now he's projectedly the starting number 2. Yay. The development of Calvin Austin III, and of course the excitement of Roman Wilson.
There's a lot of excitement over Roman Wilson. That could be the Steelers' saving grace. Maybe that's what they're relying on, is his career start in year 2. And people forget about Roman Wilson. People forget that in his last year in Michigan, 12 touchdowns in a run-heavy scheme. He's got blazing speed we need at the receiver position. He's got great route running ability, tough hands. He's a hell of a blocker. He's got a good mentality to him, man. He's got that leadership. He's got that championship pedigree in the locker room. That's what the Steelers want at wide receiver. So yeah. I don't want to underestimate Roman Wilson, but I also don't want to put too much pressure on his shoulders, too much weight on his shoulders at this point. So it might be one of those slow builds for Roman Wilson if he stays healthy. I get the excitement over Roman Wilson. I get the development of Calvin Austin, but he's coming into a contract year. I don't think he can't be serious about being comfortable with this wide receiver room. He said that last year and still tried to trade for Brandon.
I mean, I will say this. I mean, like, of course, the general manager of a football team is going to say he feels comfortable about the current group of guys that he has on the team, the players that he has.
Right.
He's not going to go out there and say, yeah, it doesn't look great. You know, we got to do something about that. No, he's going to give the guys confidence. He's going to give them, you know, some praise there, so to speak. And he's going to be like, yeah, you know, like, I like the guys that we got. I understand what he's doing. I understand what he's saying. But as a fan of this team, seeing the current state of the position, it does not entice me whatsoever.
No, I can't agree with Khan's comments, but he did say this last year and still tried to trade for Ayuk and almost had him. So he could still be ringing the phones. He still could be continuing trade talks with certain teams from the draft or whatever.
Oh, he also, Khan did. He expressed that if there is a chance and if it makes sense on adding another receiver to the team, they will look into it. But again, they feel comfortable about the current group of guys.
Really? Interesting.
Yeah. So it's, you know, he's not closing the door on that. It's not out the realm of possibility. Khan will look into it. A general manager is going to go out there and look into every scenario, every possibility. And Khan's always said, if it makes sense, we'll make the move. You know, we'll see what we can do to see if we can bring this guy to the team.
And you notice he is really changing that locker room, isn't he? You know, from Kevin Colbert's last couple draft classes, which were horrid. Absolutely horrid. You look at his last 5 draft classes, there's only 7 players remaining from those 5 classes combined. And the biggest playmaker from those draft classes is Alex Highsmith. So he's really trying to fix a lot of what Kevin Colbert caused for the Steelers.
Yeah.
Which is what we're still paying for. He's really trying to fix a lot in terms of, you know, a lot of busts, a lot of bad picks, you know, especially at the receiver position, the attitude, the antics, the characters, all the guys that just didn't want to be there. Guys like Deontay, they traded him away. Guys like Pickens, he didn't want to be here. They traded him away. Claypool, God, less said the better about Claypool, man. What a rise in a rookie year, and he never reached that ever again.
Yeah.
You know, he's really trying to fix a lot of that, not just at the receiver position, but in the entire locker room.
No, but you mentioned those receivers, and they all have a common thing in connection, and that is, of course, Colbert selected them. Colbert's seen the talent, so to speak, and he's seen, you know, like, hey, there could be something there. And they showcased it in a handful of times, you know, especially Pickens and even Deontay earlier in his career.
Well, Pickens more so than most.
Of
yes.
course. But, of course, you know, that what they also have in common as well is the attitude problems. They could never just knock it off with the attitude issues and just keep their cool and just really have all their effort on the team and on the field and whatnot. You know, because there were several times where Deontay took plays off or even Pickens took plays off, and Claypool was just a clumsy big dude out there that played so small for a man of his size.
Yeah, that's why he traded all of them away. They all got
so
one thing in common.
I get what Khan is doing. You know, he's trying to change the whole scenery. He's trying to change up the locker room. He's trying to freshen it up. And I can appreciate that, and I'm all for that. I am. It's just, again, not to repeat myself, but the timing was just very questionable.
That's the biggest issue here is the timing, yes. But when asked about the track record of trading away receivers and if it would impact the vision for how they want to assemble the team. Khan stated, "It's merely a coincidence." He finished saying they're chasing a championship, not just for the future, but this year as well. And there's still a lot of time from now and the start of the season. They're not winning a championship this year.
No. And again, Khan's going to say stuff like that because he's the general manager. You expect GMs to say that. But no, the Steelers, for one, they don't have a quarterback yet. We're still waiting on Aaron Rodgers for what feels like an eternity now.
Aaron Rodgers, yes.
We don't have a true number 2 wide receiver. Nothing speaks to me about, Super Bowl, considering the fact that we've gone one and done, 6 times now?
Yeah. Now, in terms of building a championship team or chasing a championship for the future, I get what he's saying there because his last 3 draft classes are a resemblance of that. Look at all the championship pedigree that they have added to the locker room. Broderick Jones, Darnell Washington, Mason McCormick, Roman Wilson, Will Howard, Jack Sawyer. A lot of championship guys from the collegiate level. A lot of that pedigree.
Yes.
A lot of locker room leaders from multiple rounds that they brought in, right? I get that. Plus, he's filled a lot of depth in the trenches, on the O-line, on the D-line. They're really trying to build that up, and it's going to take some time. It's a patient game, but they're really building that up.
And that's what this whole thing is. It's a patient game that all of us have to play with. We have to go along with. I'm all for about building the trenches. I'm all for about, providing the depth at the trenches and bringing in these championship pedigree guys, these blue-collar guys that want to work, that want to be here, that want to prove their worth, that want to give all their effort to the black and gold for the Steelers logo.
Sure.
That's what you want. Those are the guys that you want because those are championship caliber guys.
Yeah, Khan is building his image of the Steelers. Instead of the drama, the antics that we went through for so many years, specifically at the receiver position, he's cleaning that out, which is a good thing. It's all the reason why I was so open to trading Pickens. But what he said here in the press conference and his impromptu press meeting, I mean, he can't be serious about most of it. And again, he's the GM. He's going to say things just to say things because that's his job, and he has to. But I don't believe anything he really said regarding the receiver position and how he's comfortable. There's still going to be some trade candidates. There's still going to be some trade options. There's going to be tons of trade talks. And Lord knows when or if that's actually going to happen, but you would hope that it does because I'll tell you right now, we're going to get into some of the targets here. We're going to start with free agency. Some of these free agency options are weak.
Yeah, and looking at the free agency list, there was only 3 that really stuck out, so to speak. And even then, it's just kind of like, I suppose, right? They're the best available, but we're at the basically tail end of free agency where, guys are just being waited or they're just waiting to be signed after the draft and whatnot. So
right.
To start off, we're going to start with a veteran who's 33 years old, was with the Chicago Bears last year. That's Keenan Allen, longtime Chargers wide receiver. He's a proven veteran. He's a guy that's been always a reliable receiver. It was just 2 years ago where he had probably one of his better seasons to date with Justin Herbert and the Chargers offense. But we're talking about a guy that is getting older. He had solid chemistry with Caleb Williams. It took a little bit to really get the rhythm going. Throughout the regular season, all that had to really, it was a patient thing when it came to Caleb Williams developing and getting that chemistry going with his wide receivers, especially Keenan Allen and whatnot. So they picked up, so to speak, in the tail end of the season, and Allen really started to step up in some games. But, I mean, a 33-year-old rental, we already have that in Robert Woods.
Yeah, why not get 2? Strength in numbers, Robert.
Listen, Keenan Allen's better, of course. He's even at his age, he's still starter quality. The guy's, he's a proven starter. The guy can still go, but why even bother?
See, I wouldn't mind Keenan Allen based off of his character and his locker room leadership and the wealth of knowledge that he brings. That's what Robert Woods was for. I think Keenan Allen just adds to that, especially for a guy like Roman Wilson. If the Steelers are really banking on Roman Wilson, you're going to want to fill him with a lot of knowledge, a lot of, good character, a lot of pieces that you want in someone like him to be a team player, to be a riser, to be a dependable guy. And why not bring in someone that's going to help build a Roman Wilson? That's what I thought the Robert Woods signing was for, is it's really going to help build a guy like Roman. So if they want to bring in Keenan Allen for a similar reason while still adding the potential effect that he can still have some level of impact onto the field, nothing crazy, not into his elite status days like he used to be. But, you bring that in and help out Roman, I don't mind that. Another name that could very much do the same is Amari Cooper. The only issue with him is 8 drops last year. Do you want to deal with the drop issues? He's getting up there with age. He just didn't fit well in Buffalo. After the Buffalo trade, it seemed like oh, Buffalo finally got the #1 guy for the year, except they really didn't. He just didn't gel well. He didn't fit. It seems like
No, he
Cooper-
wasn't a true weapon. He was more of an accessory than he was as the primary weapon.
Yeah, he didn't fit well.
A secondary, really.
He's in the tail end of his career, and again, 8 drops last year.
Yeah,
I wouldn't mind Cooper for the same reasons as Keenan
I mean,
Allen.
he's a little bit younger than Allen. He's soon to be 31 years old. I would consider him still a capable starter as well. I would. But the guy didn't even have 600 yards with both the Browns and the Bills.
Yeah.
Maybe something just didn't click with Josh Allen and Amari Cooper, or Amari Cooper and the Bills, maybe. Maybe it just wasn't a good fit. Sometimes that's the case in the NFL. I have no idea. I'm not saying that if Amari Cooper were to sign with the Steelers, he'd be a great fit and he would have another 1,000-yard season like he did 2 years ago. But if you were to ask me, I probably prefer Cooper over Allen, just, based off the age factor. And, he's probably more capable of going than Allen is at this rate, at his age.
Yeah.
But the drops do concern me. 8 drops last year with both the Browns and the Bills. I don't know about that.
Well, even like catching passes from Josh Allen, the MVP last year, and not really gelling well or having too many big plays. A little concerning in terms of Cooper and where he lies at this stage of his career. But I wouldn't mind bringing in Cooper. It'd be no harm, no foul. Vet minimum, you know what I'm saying? It's just it's that veteran piece. Again, these options are very slim.
Yeah, and bringing in another aging veteran wide receiver.
Now, if you want to bring in someone a little younger, you got Gabe Davis, who was just recently cut by the Jags, but because he failed a physical, which means he's not entirely healthy.
No,
his season ended short.
Yeah, he only played 10 games after signing a 3-year, $39 million contract with the Jags last offseason. He only played in 10 games with 9 starts, 239 yards, and 2 touchdowns.
Yeah, the season ended due to a torn meniscus, which clearly is still affecting him because the Jags cut him due to a failed physical. So if the Steelers want to bring in Gabe Davis, he's got good size, 6'2", 215, something like that. He's got some really good size to him. He's got some playmaking ability. But when will he be healthy? By the time he's healthy, I would imagine the Steelers do look into him. They could throw a flower at him because of his youth and his experience in the league. He can play outside. He's got some playmaking potential. But I don't find him as being the solution or the guy. He would just come in and just be the 2. He'd be a solid 2. I just can't see him being, the permanent fix.
Yeah.
But if they want to go a younger option, and if the medicals pan out in months' time, they could very well bring in a guy like Gabe Davis.
Yeah.
Otherwise, everyone else in free agency, DJ Chark, has he done much in recent years?
The past 2 years, no, not really. And he just has injury concerns.
Nelson Aguilar, he's been with the Ravens the last 2 years and he's been more so like the 4 or 5 option. You're going to have him come in and be the 2? No thanks. Tyler Boyd, someone that we wanted last year and he signed with the Titans.
But he didn't even do anything with the Titans.
Granted, it was the Titans.
Yeah, granted it was the Titans, but I mean, like, why would we want Boyd now?
Yeah, he's a year older. I mean, he's a free agent for a reason at this stage. I don't know.
And
it doesn't entice me.
Everybody else is either a backup or special teamer on the list.
Yeah. Like, none of these options are great. So that's why the Steelers should most definitely, if they're going to add a receiver, they should most definitely trade for one. But again, the options out there as of now, where we stand, are slim too. You could look at, the dream options, the wishful thinking options. I don't view them as realistic at this stage. But if you want to look back at some of the trades that Steelers have made or the trade talks the Steelers have had in previous years or even previous months, even back towards the draft, you look at a team like the Green Bay Packers. They drafted Matthew Golden and Savion Williams. They drafted 2 receivers and they still got Jaden Reed. So what does that mean for Dontavian Wicks? What does that mean for Romeo Doubs? What does that mean for Christian Watson? They got numbers there, but one of those guys are going to be the odd man out. The Steelers could very well resume trade talks with the Packers because if you remember, during the draft, the Packers were very interested in getting George Pickens. They clearly didn't. They took Matthew Golden. I think that's a better fit for him.
Yeah. And not to mention that last year, of course, they had conversations with the Packers about Preston Smith.
Yes.
Which they made that deal. So, they have previous conversations with the Packers front office and Packers general manager.
They could easily just resume those talks and bring up the idea of, hey, what's up with Romeo Doubs or Dontavian Wicks? We're going to start with Dontavian Wicks. He's a playmaker. He's got great size that you want for an outside guy. You know, being what I think a former 5th-round pick, he really made some plays with Jordan Love. The only issue with him as well is drops. He had 8 drops last year.
Yes, he did.
Do you want to deal with that at the wide receiver position? I know he's got, good frame, good body to him.
And he's got, because he's coming into his 3rd year after being selected in the 5th round 2 years ago. So he's got 2 years left in his rookie deal. So that could be something that could inquire the Steelers into potentially trading for him, because not only would you have him this year, but you have him for next season as well, just to see, how much growth Wicks would, bring, or, like what's the chemistry of Wicks and the team and whatnot, see what else he could bring to the table. That could be something that could interest them into acquiring Wicks. It's a possibility.
And I wouldn't mind Wicks just based on that factor. And if he's cheap, let's say he's like, the Steelers trade a day 3 pick for him, and they're going to have plenty for next year. So trading one wouldn't hurt, especially for a guy like Wicks with, again, great size, plenty of starting experience. So if they wanted to throw a day 3 flyer at him, sure, it's low risk, potential high reward. But if he's just nothing more than like a great outside depth piece, sure, you have him for 2 years. I don't view Wicks as being the solution. I don't view Wicks as being like a big playmaker for the Steelers, but in terms of what they want to add to the receiving room, they like that size. They like that playmaking ability. They like getting guys in the end zone, or guys that get into the end zone. They could bring him in, and he could be a very reliable depth piece for this year, next year, the year after that, depending on how he works out. That's a decent option.
Right.
But the more likely one that I would view is someone with more years of experience, clearly, and more starting experience, is a Romeo Doubs. And the reason we bring him up is because he played at least 1 year with Aaron Rodgers.
Yeah, that was his rookie season. And he quickly earned the trust of Aaron Rodgers.
Sure did. Yes, he did.
He's got that chemistry with A-Rod. A-Rod loved him in Dobbs' rookie year. He stepped up. He had a very good performance, very good rookie season. And over the past 2 years with Jordan Love, he's really been a handy wide receiver too, considering Green Bay's rotational wide receivers with Jaden Reed, Christian Watson, and Dobbs in there before Wicks came in 2 years ago. There was a rotating door of wide receivers, and Dobbs was one of those guys that was part of it. But he's to me, so to speak, stepped up more as a wide receiver too when Wicks was a rookie and he was just getting into the picture, and Christian Watson was dealing with injuries almost every single year.
Right.
Dobbs was a guy that stepped up. He proved himself for a big body wide receiver. He's got good size, good frame, ideal size to be an outside wide receiver. He's got good route running ability and very good hands, and can find his way into the end zone. I've liked Dobbs a lot, being a former 4th rounder out of college and whatnot. I was always a fan of Dobbs. I always liked his game. I always liked what he brought to the table.
Me too.
Now, he did have a bit of controversy last year with the Packers because he was suspended by the team, by the Packers, from the Week 5 matchup versus the Rams after he stayed away from 2 days of practice due to frustration over a lack of involvement with the team's passing game. Though Dobbs did state that he was dealing with some things off the field that he did admit that he could have done a better job of communicating with the team about.
Right.
So that's probably just water under the bridge. That's probably not really a big deal and whatnot. It was a 1-game thing. The Packers, they did business. They disciplined him. They said, listen, you shouldn't have done that. And Dobbs said, listen, I should have done a better job of communicating of what I was doing, what I was going through. I apologize. And after that, there was no issue with the team between the Packers and Dobbs.
Right.
So I wouldn't even consider that as a big deal if Dobbs were to come to the Steelers.
No, I wouldn't consider that a big issue either. And I think Dobbs, I don't know who would be the most realistic to you guys, but to me, as we stand now, I think it would be Dobbs because he's in the last year of his rookie contract. So if the Packers drafted 2 receivers and they got Jaden Reed. Now, I know they're still going to want that reliable depth. I mean, he's had, 35 career starts. So they could view him as just, a great number 4, a great number 3, depending on the development of Williams, right? But he's coming to the last year of his rookie contract. It doesn't look like he's going to be re-signed next year, very similar to the Pickens situation with the Steelers. Could the Packers just get anything they could out of Dobbs, send him away, and if the Steelers do, in fact, lock down Aaron Rodgers, they could very well get a receiver he's pretty familiar with. It's just 1 year, but he's got some chemistry, and they could bring in someone that he has worked with before, and that is Dobbs. I wouldn't mind Dobbs. In fact, out of all these options, that's the one that really entices me the most.
He's the most preferred in my opinion, yeah.
The only issue with him that I have is his drops. 5 drops last year, 4 the year before. So any receiver's going to have some drops. It's just more of an issue of how serious is it.
Mm-hmm.
With Dobbs, I don't think it's too serious, but I think Dobbs would be a solid fill-in. Again, I don't view him as being the solution. I don't view him as being the fix. I don't view him as being, oh, he's going to be a great number 2 alongside DK Metcalf. I don't think any of these options right now are going to be the fix.
No, neither of these options are the fix. But, I mean, I'm trying to think of what the Steelers may be thinking because, again, they're still waiting on A-Rod. They traded away Pickens for him being a nutcase, but they're still trying to push to sign A-Rod because they're pushing for a Super Bowl, though they're nowhere near contesting for one.
Right.
But to them, it could make sense to bring in a guy like Dobbs based off the chemistry, based off the familiarity with Aaron Rodgers.
Yeah.
And would it be like, hey, would this be the best case scenario to fix wide receiver 2 after trading away Pickens? Trying to think of how the Steelers may be thinking. What's their mindset?
Right.
What's their approach to this?
This could very well, I don't know if Dobbs ever gets traded, but let's say he does. I wouldn't be surprised if this happens either before the start of the season or all the way down to midseason. This could be like another Mike Williams situation. I'll be real with you. I think he could be much better than Mike Williams.
If he's involved, if he's used.
Exactly. That's the biggest issue here. If he's used. But based off of his starting experience and what he did for the Packers the last 3 years, I think he'd be probably one of the more solid additions. Last year of his rookie contract, it wouldn't cost much. If they bring in Aaron Rodgers, they have that chemistry. That's why I view it as being one of the more realistic, probably one of the more solid trade options for the Steelers. Does it actually happen? Nobody knows.
Yeah. But I mean, like, based off, just talking about it, trying to break it down and, what all signs kind of point to, I mean, if this is a possibility that makes sense, I wouldn't hate it.
I wouldn't hate it at all either. And who knows? Maybe he earns a second contract with the Steelers and he could see himself as being maybe the number 2 or maybe just being another great depth guy with tons of starting experience. It depends, man. We'll see what happens. But in terms of teams that they've talked to, the Packers seems like the most realistic in terms of who they could trade with for a receiver, just based off of what they've done the past number of years.
Yeah.
From the Preston Smith trade, from the draft. Christian Watson is another guy they could trade away. The only issue with him is serious injury issues.
Not just that, but he's just way too inconsistent on the field.
Way too inconsistent. He's got great frame, great athleticism. You know who that reminds me of? Chase Claypool. He's not as much of a head case or a talk head as Chase Claypool, but he's a lot more injury prone.
Yeah.
So I don't know if Christian Watson would even be an option for the Steelers, but based on the fact that the Packers have added to their receiving room and guys that look like they could be out of the door pretty soon, I'll add Christian Watson as well. Based off of the options of Wicks or Dobbs, I would view Watson as being the weakest option of the 3.
I would agree.
That's just how I view it. I mean, we'll see if anything breaks between these two teams again.
Yeah.
Otherwise, I'll be real with you. I can't think of anyone else. I mean, I'll throw one more name at you. John Mechie III.
Oh, my God.
Former second-round pick out of Alabama. Unfortunately, his rookie year was taken away from him because he had leukemia. And, thankfully, he was in remission. He recovered.
Yeah, thankfully.
And the past 2 years, maybe it was because the Texans have made so many moves at wide receiver with Tank Dell and Nico Collins. He had Stephon Diggs for a little bit, that Mechie didn't really get a lot of snaps. But all the injuries that they suffered last year, Mechie still didn't do much.
No.
And now Mechie seems like he could be out of Houston because look at their receiver room. Nico Collins, Tank Dell, Justin Watson they added. Jaden Higgins, Jalen Noel, they both drafted out of Iowa State.
They traded for Christian Kirk as well.
I mean, Mechie's not going to be there much longer. So could he be a very cheap move for the Steelers, like a 6th or 7th round flyer for whatever year? Sure.
Now, I do remember during the preseason, toward the tail end of last year's preseason, there were talks from many teams contacting the Texans about Mechie's availability. Of course, the Texans didn't move on from Mechie. They tried to give him the opportunity. Mechie didn't really do much, so I could see, that possibly happening, especially in the Steelers' case, considering they could add another name, add another depth guy, give this guy another opportunity, and John Mechie. But Mechie didn't do anything with C.J. Stroud. He didn't do anything with the Texans in that passing game with the injuries. I can't really see Mechie doing a lot for the Steelers passing game.
No, especially with only 3 career starts. I know he's only played 2 years, but I can't view Mechie being, the end-all, be-all, or the fix to everything.
No.
I just can't. He'd be a depth piece, and that's about it. He'd probably see most time on special teams. Maybe I'm underestimating him in the fact that he didn't get that great of an opportunity over there. I just, based off of the previous years, I can't view Mechie being a huge fix or a huge move for the Steelers. It's just like, oh, we trade for a receiver? Okay, cool. That's how I view it. That's honestly how I view it with all these options. I can't think of any other options, guys. I'm literally lost at some of the more realistic options. I'm trying to be realistic here.
Yeah.
I can't think of any more realistic options for the Steelers.
I mean, I looked through several teams, I looked through several names, and this is just what we came up with. I can't think of anybody else right off the top of my head, right off the bat.
Like the receiving position or the receiving pool is pretty weak for agency trades. And I mean realistically. I'm not talking about these dream moves that you guys are talking about. I'm talking realistic. It's pretty weak out there, guys. It's really, really dry.
Considering the Steelers' quest to vie for a championship, still waiting on A-Rod, these are the possibilities at hand for the Steelers. Realistic possibilities, so to speak, at hand for the Steelers.
Now, could things escalate between some of these more rich names? They could. Things could very well escalate, man. You know, it's the NFL. No one's loyal nowadays.
No.
Everyone's always on the move, especially at the receiver position, so things could escalate. But where we stand now, the well is dry. The options are pretty bad. I'm not going to lie to you. Like, I feel like any of the options that we discussed, any targets, they're just, You know, they don't move the needle for me.
No. To which, I mean, like, at this point, I don't even know if the Steelers will add another wide receiver. I feel like they should. I feel like it's something they should do. But do I think they will? In my opinion, I don't, because I think they're going to see what Roman Wilson can bring to the table, give him the chance if he can stay healthy. Hopefully, he can stay healthy. Give him the opportunity, see if he can take that jump in the second year, and just see what Calvin Austin can do with what appears to be more opportunities. And year by year for Austin, he's gotten more opportunities from his second year to his third year. Maybe that pattern continues, hopefully, and see what Austin can do in a contract year.
I like Calvin Austin. I just don't know if I like him as a number 2 full-time. Roman Wilson, I'm very excited for. You know, if the Steelers want to bank on him, you know, it's worth giving him an opportunity. They drafted him in the 3rd round last year, and you know, he was hurt because of a damn jet sweep in training camp last year. He didn't really play a lot. He played, 5 snaps maybe?
5 snaps in one game against the Raiders game.
Yeah, that's it. That's it. So to give him an opportunity is a total fair thing for the Steelers to do. But they still got to add somebody. And if they add somebody, I wouldn't expect it to be the biggest name. I wouldn't expect it to be a needle mover move. So
if they want to compete, if they want to vie.
So even if they add a receiver, I don't think it's going to be anything crazy exciting unless Omar Khan pulls off another DK type situation or a Brandon Ayuk type situation, but actually pull the trigger this time. We'll see. Things could change from now and then. You know, like Omar Khan said, there's a lot of time between now and the start of the season.
There's going to be a long wait until the start of the regular season.
But where we stand now, the receiving position for the Steelers is weak outside of DK and the potential of Roman and Calvin maybe.
It's there.
It's there. I mean, it's a lot to bank on, but it's there. And all the other options that are out there in terms of free agency and the trade market, the well is dry, folks. It is just weak out there. So things could change from now up until the start of the regular season. A lot could change. Rumors could circulate. Players could ask for a trade. Things could happen. Anything could happen. So where we stand now, it's bad. But at the start of the season, or maybe at the trade deadline, midseason, anything could change. And for the Steelers' sake of the receiver position, I would hope it changes. It's just where we stand now, we kind of suck at the receiver position.
Yeah.
It's just rinse and repeat. It's last year all over again with DK Metcalf.
And A-Rod possibly being the quarterback. And that's yet to be determined.
Yeah, I mean, if you look at it from a grand scheme sort of situation, it's not looking good. It's not looking good at all.
Like, why even vie for a championship? I'm not saying tank the whole season and whatnot, but what I'm saying is do a mini rebuild. Just humble yourselves, acknowledge that, listen, like, this ain't the year for you. Just see what Roman can do. Use this year as a mini rebuild, as a mini reload. Starting to have, 12 picks heading to the draft next year. Then that's when you really reload. That's when you really build for the future. Use this year as a mini rebuild to build for the future instead of just wasting another year relying on a 41-year-old quarterback. I just don't see that paying off. I don't.
No, I don't see the benefit in that. I don't see how that really
furthers
this team.
But I know the Steelers are going to go that approach of competing, of championship. Khan said himself.
Because they know nothing better. And listen, that's always the goal. That's the standard, right? It's just this year, I don't know about that, partner. I don't know about that.
It's tough to really get in line with that. I don't believe that. As a fan, I don't.
No. So, I mean, we'll see what happens. Again, there's a lot of time from now and then. But one thing we all know for sure, the Steelers have to trade for a wide receiver.
We'll see if they do.
We'll see what they do. If they do, I wouldn't expect it to be anything crazy, but who knows? Maybe Omar Khan has something up his sleeve. Maybe there's a greater plan here. Maybe there's a greater scheme that Omar Khan has, but obviously he can't say yet until a move happens. If a move happens.
Again, if it makes sense.
That's what Omar Khan's all about. If it makes sense for the team, man. He doesn't crack for anybody. He doesn't really he controls everything. I've always said this about Khan. He controls everything. You know, he doesn't crack for a certain team or a certain player, and that's in regards to his team and the teams he's negotiating with, which is why he traded Pickens, which is why he didn't further his offer for like a Jalen Johnson when he tried with the Bears or like a Brandon Ayuk last year.
Yeah.
You could argue that some of that hasn't really paid off for the Steelers in retrospect because we're still suffering at such positions. But Omar Khan does things for a reason, and I guess we got to trust the process.
Time will tell, man.
Let us know your guys' thoughts down in the comments below. If you guys have any other options, please put them down below. Because
I would love to know what you guys think.
I can't begin to think who else. And I'm talking realistically. I mean, if you want to put some dream scenarios down there, feel free, because maybe those dream scenarios become reality. DK was a dream at one point, and that became reality. So let us know your guys' thoughts. Let us know your guys' opinions and your options. Any trade targets you guys got, let us know. Otherwise, let us know your guys' thoughts. See you in the next one. Here we go, Steelers.
And as always, like, comment, subscribe, and we'll see you later.
Peace!